All right, quick video. It really does have to be quick because I have my son is coming over, so I'm going to have to be somewhere else in about 15 minutes. So, last night, the U.S. and Israel, in cooperation, attacked Iran over something. Regime change, I think, is the current story. And Iran then turned around and attacked other nations in the Persian Gulf region that are allied with the U.S. And I think we have air bases there. They either attack the air bases or they attack the surrounds. It's a warning shot, right? It's not probably meant to be the opening salvos of war, but that's what it is. It's the opening salvos of war, and I kind of don't care who wars with who. The Russians and the Ukrainians are warring. Pretty soon, the Chinese and the Taiwanese will be warring, and then the North Koreans and the South Koreans will be at war. And the U.S. is already at war with Venezuela, or well, they were, and they'll soon be at war with Cuba. And this is just how it's going to go, right? However, I'm on here to make a different kind of statement. My novel, it was 100 Days, link in the description, available on Amazon as ebook, softback book, and hardback book, begins essentially with this scenario. What just happened last night today, where Iran and Saudi Arabia have an exchange. In the story, it's very small, very primitive nuclear weapons. They blow up each other's export terminals for crude oil. And then this sets off a crisis. Neither Iran nor Saudi Arabia can then export oil effectively. Not like they could. But even if they can export something, it still sends a shock. In the novel, it sends a shock through the global markets. Now, as of today, as of my doing this video, this short video, that hasn't really happened. Iran and Saudi Arabia really don't want to interfere with each other's oil exporting capability. They may not like each other. The Iranians are fomenting unrest against the Saudis, and the Saudis want some regime change in Iran. But let's face it, they're all businessmen, right? They're all businessmen, and they're not. And while they might compete on regional hegemony and influence, they really don't want to interfere with each other's business. So probably that's not on the table right now. But the reason I'm on here right now is to remind my subscribers and the people who are going to watch this video is that this was easily predicted. And when I used it as a trope, as a predictable outcome of global unrest, in my book, I used it as a means to shut down the global oil economy. And when that happened, then everything else in the book takes place. The book is about, over the course of about 100 days, the collapse of the global industrialized civilization. And the reason is simple. The global industry needs constant, 24/7, always on, never interrupted, not even for a minute, access to crude oil and coal and natural gas, in particular crude oil. We have some stockpiles of crude oil, but it kind of doesn't matter. In the case of a global collapse or a global war, and you might get both, then whatever nations have stockpiles are going to keep those to themselves. So the U.S. will stop exporting. Saudi Arabia will stop exporting. They'll be keeping their reserves to themselves for their own internal use because of war or because of uncertainty or because of something else. So even if it's just a temporary shock or it's a temporary disruption, it then becomes permanent because everyone does what everyone always does. They panic. The book is about what happens when people do people. When people do people things and panic, because that's what they always do. They always panic. Demagogues always rise up, waving the flag and protecting democracy or protecting the religion or protecting the Constitution. And then everyone panics. And demagoguery loves a good panic, because with a good panic, they can seize more power. And that's all they're really interested in, seizing power. Power, 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 power. Essentially, every democracy becomes an authoritarian regime as a result of a global crisis. Every democracy becomes an authoritarian regime because people don't want democracy, really. Democracy is fun to play with. It's a nice hobby to have. But when the chips are down, then people expect someone to make decisions, and to make those decisions now. And the emphasis here is on someone. And the emphasis here is on actually one. They want one person to make all the decisions, to be the daddy figure. Okay, to be the daddy figure, and to tell everyone an adult story, adult fairy tale, and then the daddy figure says, I'm going to make everything fine, and then you have authoritarianism everywhere. Pretty much. Like overnight. Every democracy goes the same route. Because right now, we're all under the same umbrella, and it's all crude oil. All the time, every day, for everything. Everywhere. We just had a crew come out here and replace a telephone power pole, utility pole, electricity, okay, right in front of our house. And there was one time there was like 8 trucks out here, all burning diesel. And they brought in a big pole on a trailer, and they had a big truck that craned it up and dropped it into a hole they drilled. And then they were all these men up there on buckets transferring all the wires and everything else. It took them literally 12 hours. And it was all enabled by fossil fuels. All those trucks and all the power on the wires and everything else. And, in the future, where all of a sudden crude oil resources are either cut off, or they're being reserved for the elites, or they're being reserved for the military, all of which would happen, then getting your power pole fixed in front of your house is a non-starter. You don't count. Not that much. Unless your name is Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or something, you don't count. Oh, unless you're running a data center, you don't count. So I got my power pole fixed just one day ahead of what according to my novel is the coming collapse of the oil economy. Now here I am, hyperbole, and I'm fear-mongering and scaremongering. I wrote the book. It's already a fearful book. You can see the cover right here, an end of civilization novel. And please note the cover of the book is the oil fields on fire. Right? So, yes, I know what's coming, and you should know what's coming too. And if you're my age, you remember the Arab oil embargoes back in the 1970s. They were deliberately doing that. But just extrapolate that to basically the end of oil. And I don't mean the end of oil because we run out, or the end of oil because we don't have enough technology. The end of oil because everyone wants to keep their own oil, which is a natural panic response. The U.S. just keeps its oil. And then any country, Germany, the UK, Australia, anybody else who was needing that to keep their economy going, they can't. And they collapse. And that's how it is. Everybody panics, because that's what everybody always does. And then they take all their oil resources and they keep them. Or they can't generate new ones. They sell them, and then they don't have any replacements to export again, because there's a war going on, or there's something else going on. Or the Iranians, or maybe the Saudis, mine the Straits of Hormuz, and now the ships can't get out. And then there's a missile that hits a pipeline, and now the pipeline can't pipe crude oil into other countries, into Europe. There's 100 ways that this could all come crashing down, and then the panic sets in, and then all the cooperation stops, and then everybody starts becoming suspicious and conspiratorial, and then it's over, and it can be over in 2 weeks. Now, the book is not about any of that. That's just the premise to why everything else happens. It doesn't go into that discussion at all. It just says it happened. It happens to involve nuclear weapons, but I just wanted to throw that in there because neither Iran nor Saudi Arabia are supposed to have them. And so in the book, I suggest, yeah, they do. They just don't want anybody to know. And that's kind of a key plot element to the entire novel. Nobody was supposed to know. Nobody was supposed to be thinking about this. Nobody was supposed to prepare. It's almost as if we were all supposed to panic. The terrible thing happens, then terrible things happen, and then more terrible things happen, and people just panic. And no one can prepare. No one can get away. No one knows what to do. All the leadership are power-grabbing authoritarians because this is their day, right? This is their big chance. So they're not gonna let that get by. They're gonna strike while the iron is hot. And so that's what's going to happen. That's what happens in the case of a global collapse. And the global collapse comes about because of a collapse in trust of crude oil availability and deliveries. And we're seeing that kick off today. So in my book, it is the premise to 250 pages of speculative fiction. But that's what it is. It's speculation. And as of last night, we are now in the process funnel to enter my novel, It Was 100 Days. And you need to read it. You need to read that right now. Yes, my novel is a user's manual. It's not meant to be really a cautionary tale because I can't stop and you can't stop. We together can't stop events as they are now playing out on the ground. We never could have. These events are going to happen. The bad thing is going to happen. And when it happens, we will be swept up in it. And according to my story, it's a really, really rough 100 days. Now, actually, the book is optimistic. And it's not really meant to be scary. There's no scary parts in the book. I was very deliberate about that. This is not a horror novel. This is not The Road. This is not some end of the world scenario. In fact, the people who survive this and create community and start to work together, they have actually no idea what's happening in the outside world. All that happens to them is they begin to feel increasingly isolated. And they have their community, and they have their work they have to do, and they're committed to that. And sometimes days are good, and other times days are bad. And all throughout the novel, the protagonist asks the question, where is everybody? Where is everybody? And they don't know. We end up having islands of stability. And this is a user's manual on how to find, establish, and maintain and defend islands of stability. That is the work of the book. That was my suggestion to the readers, that is actually the work. We can't stop wars in the Middle East. We can't stop anything. We can't stop. We have no influence on any of this. We just have influence on where we end up. We have influence over whether we panic or not. We have influence over whether we work with our neighbors or not. Where does the food come from? Can we influence that? Can we influence our own security? Can we influence protecting our families and our children? Do we have any agency or any power or any control over any of those things? And the answer is, yeah, you do. But maybe that's all you have. Global events on the global stage are going to be like the Swahili story, right? Elephants fighting. And when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And that's us. We're the grass. So now the elephants are going to fight. This dust up in the Middle East will probably die down for a little bit, and then it'll flare back up again. And pretty soon, the Iranians will roll out their one tiny, dirty, inefficient little nuclear bomb, and they'll blow up the Saudi oil facilities, just like happens in the book. And then very mysteriously, somebody with a nuclear weapon blows up the Iranian oil terminal in Karg Island. Very mysterious. Don't know how that happened. Don't know who did it. And then we're off to the races, folks. So now's the time. You got your warning last night. It's all in the news. That's all. The only warning you're going to get. And you need to read my book now. Yes, I'll get sales and royalties and all that stuff, but that's not why I wrote the book. I wrote the book because you need to read the book. So get off of this video, find the link in the description, go to Amazon, buy the hardback, buy the softback, or just download the ebook, okay? Do it now. Do it right now because now is the time. Maybe a month ago it didn't make any sense, but as of today, my book, which was speculative fiction a month ago, is now becoming a documentary. Right? Isn't that what's going to happen? it becomes a documentary. And you need to be on top of that. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book for you. That's why I did it. That's enough on that. You've been warned. Now it's time to take this shit seriously. Now it's time to have the adult conversation, which is what they do in the book. They have the adult conversation. The neighbors meet. They stand in the street. They cross their arms. They listen to all the rioting and the gunfire around them, and they see the smoke curling up over the horizon from the different fires that are going on, and they stand there in the middle of the intersection, no cars, no nothing going on, and there's no oil, there's no gas, everything's been looted, and they're standing there in the middle of the street with their arms crossed, looking at each other and saying, well, what are we going to do? And they're not panicking. They're not panicking. They're having the adult conversation. What are we going to do, folks? And in 100 days, they do it. They do it. And I think people can do it. I think you're capable of doing it. I know I am. And I think we're going to have to do it. I think these are early days, but now's the time. Now's the time, people. Grow a spine. Get a grip on the situation. Stop being babies. Stop being wrapped up in your own private little catastrophes. Now is the time. Right now, today. That's what I have. I got work to do. So do you. Your work is a little different than mine, but we both have work to do. So I'm going to stop this stream, and you're going to go to Amazon. You're going to order my book. Because that's what you're supposed to do now. And remember, and now this holds more true than it ever did. Don't die.